Hello again. This episode is going to be about the first of all mistranslations in the Scripture, the first of all mistranslations in the Torah and the prophets. The Christian world, and to some extent the Jewish world, needs to prepare for some shock and awe here, because in the vast majority of their Bible translations, the first verse in the Bible is mistranslated. The King James Version, the ESV version, the NIV version, and even popular Jewish versions. This includes the popular Jewish Publication Society, Tanach, published in 1917. It also mistranslates the very first verse of the Bible. Before launching into an explanation and proof of this point, I would like to read to you what the corrected version is. I have printed the corrected version in The Good News of Messiah in a note, and I've also printed it in Volume 2, The Scroll of Biblical Chronology in Ancient Near Eastern History. First, I would like to read the corrected version out of the Scroll of Biblical Chronology in Ancient Near Eastern History. Volume 2 is now available. From page 20. In the beginning of the Almighty's creating the heavens and the earth, when the earth had been naught and nothing, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of the Almighty was making a vibrating on the face of the waters. Then the Almighty says, "Let it become light." One sentence, verses 1, 2, and the first part of verse 3, makes one sentence in the Hebrew. Let's now read the note from the Good News of Messiah. Good News of Messiah, 5th edition. This note is on page 400. Genesis note. In the beginning of the Almighty's creating of the heavens and the earth, when the earth had been naught and nothing, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of the Almighty was making a vibrating over the face of the waters. Then the Almighty says, "Let there be light." Then there is light. Then the Almighty sees the light, that it is good. Verses 1 through 3. Okay, there are some very important theological errors that are exposed by translating this text correctly. I should probably summarize them for you. One of the big arguments with the traditional translation, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," is that since it's in the beginning, it's the beginning of time, and that before in the beginning there was only timeless eternity. The corrected translation implies no such thing. There could have been time before Genesis 1:1, in the ordinary sense. Another doctrine that goes down with the corrected translation is the so-called gap theory, as I will explain when we get into the text. Okay, next I want to go to the screen recorder, and we're going to start our explanation with some of the translations that do approximately get it correctly. Then we'll go into the Hebrew and the grammar. Okay, before we go to the screen recording, I want to show you what I read from Volume 2 of the Scroll of Biblical Chronology in Ancient Near Eastern History. Here it is on page 20, and at the top of the next page here. This is probably one of the first views of the inside of Volume 2 I've got, that I've shown you. Charts run sideways here. You can pause the video if you want to look a little more closely here. Let's go over the table of contents. There you go, the table of contents. Okay, here's the note in the Good News of Messiah, page 400. In the beginning of the Almighty's creating of the heavens and the earth, when the earth had been naught and nothing. Now I want to show you Genesis 1:1 in the Stone Edition Tanakh. This is a Jewish version, fairly literal one. Here it is. In the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth, when the earth was astonishingly empty. That reads almost exactly the way I translate it. Just some synonym or dynamic equivalent switch outs. I use Almighty here, but essentially the same. Okay, this is from the Sapirstein edition, the Torah with Rashi's commentary translated, annotated, and elucidated. First volume of a 5-volume set, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning of God's creating, in the beginning of. Notice that, in the beginning of. Flip another page over here to find the end of the verse. In the beginning of God's creating of the heavens and the earth, when the earth was bewilderment and void. Okay, this is a poor translation here, but as we read in the other Jewish version, it says astonishingly empty. Comment here by the commentator on verse 1. This verse cannot be taken literally, for its literal meaning seems linguistically incorrect. In the beginning of, God created the heavens and the earth. Bereshit is a noun in the construct and requires another noun to complete the phrase. That noun is lacking. See Rashi below. I'll show you what they mean. The word bara here in the Masoretic text is pointed in the perfect. Once we correct this, it will be linguistically correct. Bereshit is in the construct. You can pause the video if you wish at this point, but here's where Rashi gives his extensive arguments for the reason for the translation to be this way. I will be going through them myself on the screen recorder. All right, here we are on BibleHub.com again in the Interlinear, and we're looking at the first word of the Bible here, Bereshit. And the first error I would like to note is this accent mark right here. The accent marks were added after the 6th century AD by unbelieving Jewish scribes named Masoretes. The accent marks were not part of the original text. The reason we have to question the accent marks is because the accent marks are not just punctuation. They are also a system of interpreting the Hebrew text, interpreting what it means. The system of interpretation was imposed upon the text after the 6th century AD by Jewish scribes that did not believe in Messiah. The system of interpretation that they imposed on the text followed Jewish traditions, and some of these traditions are incorrect. So we have to start with an open mind and start with a fresh interpretation of the text based on logic and reason, without the prejudice of the interpretation of the accent marks. In this verse, the accent marks we have to eliminate are in the first 2 words because they affect the grammar of the sentence. So let's delete the accent mark in the first word here. There we go. We've deleted the accent mark in Bereshit. Alrighty. Also added between the 6th and 9th centuries AD were the vowel points and the other marks. Most of the time we don't have to question the vowel points. The vowel points can be supplied from regular paradigms for Hebrew words. They don't all have to actually explicitly be memorized. In this case, the vowel points of the second word are incorrect. So we will delete all of the markings here. There are no original texts with anything except the consonantal letters, not in the Dead Sea Scroll, not in any ancient manuscript before the 6th century AD. The vowel points also represent an interpretation of the text, since sometimes the same consonants can be vowel pointed in more than one way. So there's actually a choice. So let's delete the vowel points from this word. There we go. Now that we've eliminated the accent marks from Bereshit, there are 2 possible interpretations of the word. It could mean in the beginning of, the definite article being implied, or it can mean in the beginning, comma. The meaning of Bereshit and all other occurrences in the Hebrew Bible, which are 4 other cases, is in the beginning of. Without the ba preposition, the meaning of Reshit in almost all other instances in the Hebrew Bible is beginning of. So the normal sense of Bereshit is in the beginning of, not in the beginning. This ending is called construct. The non-construct ending of Bereshit is Barishona. If you doubt me, you can check out all the occurrences of Bereshit by clicking on this link here, Reshit. This is one of the few cases where the of is omitted. In the very next instance in the concordance, we see that the of is included, and in the next, and in the next, and in the next. Here is one of the few cases where it doesn't have an of after it. An offering of first fruits, comma, you shall bring. and the accent mark reflects it. If we look at the usages of the complete word Bereshit, we will see that in all cases it's a construct. In the beginning of, in the beginning of, Bereshit, in the beginning of, in the beginning of, Bereshit. Therefore, the normal sense of Bereshit is in the beginning of. The reason I say normal sense is because if I said it was always that way, then someone would come and find an exception to that statement, and then they would use the exception to interpret Bereshit according to the tradition as not being construct. This, however, is circular reasoning because it depends on the tradition to pick out the exception when the norm actually is construct in the beginning of. If we want to get to the bottom of the truth, we have to start by estimating everything according to the norm. In the beginning of is the norm, and then see what the results are. If we don't, we will end up in the trap of circular reasoning. So let's make the correction here. I'm going to put the word the in brackets. In the beginning of. We also now have to correct the grammar. There we go. We put the tag for construct on the end. Feminine singular construct. Likewise, if we mouse over it, it now says feminine singular construct. The translation of the construct is of. This is the normal sense of Bereshit. A construct noun requires another noun to come after it. We can achieve this by vowel pointing boro as an infinitive construct. An infinitive construct is a verb used like a noun. So let's make that correction. Alright, boro is now an infinitive construct. If we mouse over it, infinitive construct. The infinitive construct would be translated creating of or creation of. In the beginning of, creating of. So when you have a construct chain and the last word is definite, then all the words in the construct chain are definite. That is why we can put the here. We now have to put the in here. In the beginning of, the creating of. Elohim. We don't have to change any marks on this word. This is a major accent mark, which is like a semicolon or a comma. The meaning of Elohim is Almighty. Or you could just substitute Elohim here if you want. Since it's a proper noun, it's definite. The Almighty. In the beginning of, the creating of, the Almighty. Now, as a rule of grammar, when you have an infinitive construct, the word that follows the infinitive construct, Elohim, or often a suffix attached to the infinitive construct, can either be the object of the verb or the subject of the verb. In other words, it could mean the creating of Elohim, which of course is nonsense, or it could be Elohim could be the subject, Elohim's creating, in the beginning of Elohim's creating. So the sense would be the creating by the Almighty. In order to remove the ambiguity, we would interpret this of in the sense of by. So let's put some parentheses after the of, showing how we're going to interpret this construct of. We're going to interpret the word following as the subject. In the beginning of the creating by the Almighty. We can simplify this greatly by interpreting this as a possessive. That will require an apostrophe S here in English and the word creating here. In the beginning of the Almighty's creating. Now to reflect English word order, we should put the subject first and the verb next. So let's switch these around. In the beginning of the Almighty's creating the heavens and the earth. Bereshit, Baro, Elohim, et Hashemayim, ve'et Haaretz. This is a direct object marker. 8. It marks the object of the verb. In other words, it tells us what is being created. Et Hashemayim. Definite article, plural, the heavens. This is correctly translated. The 8. And another direct object marker, Haaretz. This accent mark should be eliminated here. This accent mark marks the end of the verse. This also marks the end of the verse. Actually, it's not the end of the verse. It's only an introductory clause. So the proper punctuation here would be a comma. In the beginning of the Almighty's creating the heavens and the earth, comma. So let's eliminate this and put a comma down here. There we go. Comma. Accent mark eliminated. Comma. The earth. That makes this whole clause an introductory clause. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, comma.